Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can work together to advance the cause of Christ among Free Will Baptists around the world. Today we have with us Mr. Rick Bowling. He works for Free Will Baptist North American Ministries with the cross-cultural aspect, and before that he was a missionary in Uruguay down in South America. So Brother Rick, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's my honor.
Man, I hope everybody will get the latest edition of One Magazine. If you're listening, this is the February-March edition. It's on page 16. And Brother Rick has an article in there, If Not You, Then Who? And so we're all called to be ministers of the gospel and to be doing what we can to win others to Christ, aren't we, Brother Rick?
Yes, sir.
I was reading in this article and I realized, wow, you have had some exposure to some of the great soul winners of our movement across the years. You talked about Bob Shockey, Roy Thomas, and Connie Cariker, and Trymon Messer. What was it like to be around those guys back in those days?
Well, Bob Shockey, I just knew him at a distance, but could tell what his heartbeat was in meetings and such like that. That's when a lot of times we'd have national programs and things, and you could see what Bob Shockey's heart was about. Mm-hmm. Bob Shockey go to a restaurant, and he'd most of the time win the waitress or waiter that was waiting on him. You know, I've never been that good of a soul winner, but back in those days, it seemed like it's an emphasis among Free Will Baptists that we were soul winners. And I think back then I heard it, that we had the name of being soul winners, you know? Yeah. And then Roy Thomas, I was a little bit after his time as well, but he and Trymon, Connie, John Gibbs would have soul-winning Bible conferences, and if I was within 100 miles of there, I went because those guys were fervent with the preaching, fervent with the desire to win souls, and I think that helped our denomination in that way. Mm-hmm.
So it seems like everywhere these guys went, they were thinking about, well, this is my waitress. I remember Bob Shockey talk about even people at the gas station.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like always think about the gospel.
He'd put you to shame because you didn't win anybody when you was pumping your gas full. Now, Bob Shockey, but these guys, that was their compassion.
Yes.
And that's what they talked about, and that's what they did.
And so what you're saying is that we need to think about, if not you, then who? We're believers, so whether we're at work, whether we're at school, or even traveling, you know, on an airplane and so forth, to be thinking about the people that we're around and doing what we can to reach out to them and help them to come to know the Lord as Savior.
Yes. I think it should be on our minds all the time. I think that should be our goal. It's like a deacon. I asked one time, I says, what kind of work do you do? And he said, I'm a deacon of the church. I said, no, what kind of work do you do? He says, I'm a deacon of the church. I said, how do you eat? And he said, how do I make my living? But, you know, it is a full-time job to be a Christian. Mm-hmm. And we've got the gospel, the richest message this world has ever heard, most needed message that this world has ever heard. And we need to get it out there wherever we're at.
Yes. So not just think, hey, I'm a plumber or I'm a professor or whatever. I'm thinking my mission today is do what I can to reach others for Christ. I've got a vocation, if you will, but that also is an avenue to get in, to be with people that might not normally enter the church and really focus that way.
That's right.
You're working with a lot of our Hispanic pastors. Do you sense that it's more evident in that particular culture? I mean, it feels like those churches are growing quite extensively.
Well, one of the reasons that they're growing, there's a lot of fish and not a lot of fishermen. Mm-hmm. But our guys, all of our missionaries are zeroed in on soul winning. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's their life. You can see sort of the Bob Shockeys in them, or the Roy Thomas in them, or the Trymon Messer in them. They live and eat and function to win souls. They go to prisons, they do this, that, and the other. But their greatest goal in life is to win people to Christ and do whatever it takes. If you're in their house at night, I stop staying with them at night because they'll open their houses up to the Hispanic community so that they'll have that time and feed them and everything, you know, just to share the gospel with them. Mm-hmm. And and they'd be there 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. The Hispanics don't start till about 12 o'clock. But it's and in that, they have built each of our major missionaries have built multi-churches. And I think if our churches, talking about revitalization, if our churches would get back to personal soul winning, I think it'd help us a lot. It'd heal us a lot.
So what you're observing in their community is, come over to my house. Let's eat a little food or whatever.
That's right.
And they spend some time talking about the Lord. It also sounds like they get lost in their time a little bit sometimes with the deadlines.
Well, that's a Hispanic life. They'll have a soccer game for the kids in their backyard and then preach to them before they leave.
Oh, yes.
So, and that's very effective. They got a very young congregation, most of them have.
Yes.
And so these young people, you can fill a soccer field real easy with Hispanics.
Yes.
And then you preach to them afterwards, and you're going to win some to Christ.
Somebody will come to the Lord.
That's right.
So a lot of the things they're doing are things that the Anglos used to do, if you will, or churches throughout the United States.
Yeah.
We can learn a lot from what's happening right now in many of those communities and try to emulate that if you're a white person listening. But any Christian can think about how we can use that relational opportunity to win someone to the Lord.
Yeah. Well, when I first got saved in Hamilton, Brother Bonnie Hughes, W.B. Hughes, he exposed me to a lot of things. And at that time, they was having a Luther Rice soul winning. I don't know, convention or meetings or whatever, and we would go to that, where guys would pump you up about what to win souls, and you'd go out of there, and that's when we had the bus ministry. We were filling buses up, and you know what I'm talking about. It actually worked,
right?
And our churches were vibrant.
So we've got to think about where the people are at. You've mentioned some of our folks going to the prisons and so forth. You've talked about using soccer games, whatever athletic events, and then also relationally. You've seen a lot of this across the time. I got to ask you, though, to tell me a bit about Ida Frederick. You wrote about her in the One Magazine article. What was it about her that just captured your attention?
Well, Ida Frederick was a lady of God's power. When she was in church there near Birmingham, she'd have a prayer closet. She was a prayer warrior. You don't hear a lot about that anymore, but she'd stay in her closet praying. And then she met some Haitian people, and she got interested in Haiti. And she spent the rest of her life going to Haiti and back as a single person, a widow, and trying to get into churches and such like as that. I mean, she spent her entire life trying to win the Haitian people to the Lord and build churches. And there's no telling how many thousands of people that lady touched, and how many thousands are in heaven now because she was there.
Wow. So one person taking the time to pray, taking the time to focus on other people made a difference in so many people, perhaps thousands of people's lives.
I would guess maybe thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a lot of people from the past, and you're talking about how your current ministry, working in cross-cultural environments, some of the things you've observed there, trying to take all this and pull it together. Here we are in 2021, and we're looking at the church. What kind of advice, what kind of needs do you see our church have today, and advice you give for them in trying to address the needs of people?
Well, it's been a while since I've been a pastor, and I have no idea what it is to be a pastor nowadays. And so I couldn't speak to that, because I'm sure that it's not easy being a pastor. But the thing about it is, it's like Dr. David Crow, our director. He's another one, emphasizing soul winning, emphasizing building churches. He's put us goals for 5 years. And I'm not sure that would be a bad thing for a church to do. Emphasize soul winning. Emphasize building your church up. Emphasize goals. We want to have this many in 5 years. And there was a program at one time, One Christian Makes a Christian. And if you double a church every year, you'll be looking pretty good in 3 or 4 years. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But I think Brother David, he's helping our Hispanic group do that. And our American missionaries are doing an awesome job with building churches. So I guess only advice I'd give is be like old Franklin Graham. When you get up there, preach to Christ.
Yeah.
And try to win people to Christ.
And an individual, a lot of these people you're talking about, ICMA, you're thinking about people like Bob Shockey. They're moving in their environment. The deacon you mentioned earlier, this is something anyone can do.
Anyone can do.
Any follower of Jesus Christ can go and can win souls, can point people toward Jesus wherever they may go. And so that's what you're seeing a lot with a lot of our Hispanic Christians, and that's what we saw a lot from Christians in the past, and that's, I guess, your call. If not you, then who? Then that's what we all need to be about today.
That's right.
Well, Brother Rick, thank you for taking the time to share with us, my friend, and I encourage our listeners, read the article. I encourage you also to share this message, the podcast here, with others. You can go like the Better Together podcast and share it with friends. And as we go about doing our work, as we look through our neighborhoods, wherever we may find ourselves, let us all be busy trying to share our faith with others, because if not us, then who would it be? Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.